and get us going on Facebook here. And last, share my screen. All right. Hope everybody can see my screen now.
Yes.
You guys see this my little bar up here, or is that just
Yes,
only me
I
that sees
can.
it? No, that's weird.
What bar is that?
It's for my Zoom bar, control bar. Okay.
No, we don't see that.
Okay. Well, I just moved it out of there. So that was our networking session. I hope everybody had a good time, met some people that you didn't know. And again, use the chat button down below to put your contact information in, and then save that at the end of the meeting so that you've got the information, contact information for the people that you met tonight. Again, in memory of Gene Garino, he was my inspiration to get this group started 5 years ago. We lost him last month, so just wanted to say we miss you, Gene. So we've got a website, the HTTP DAALR, which is Denver Association of Assisted Living Residences. And on the site, there is, if you're in Colorado, it's pretty important for you to go to the key links. And there is 2 links there that you really need to study and understand like the back of your hand. These are all the regulations that you need to know about. This is Colorado specific, so sorry we don't have this for every state. But if you are in Colorado, make sure that you know the Chapter 7 regulations inside and out. That is what they will expect you to know in a survey. The Chapter 2 regulations are more about the building itself. I hope everybody can join our Facebook page, Denver ALR. This is just a great networking. And again, there's power in this networking, being able to share your information and ask questions. So please use the Facebook page to enhance that. We thank everybody that signed up through Meetup. It just helps us understand where we're at. This is probably more when we go live again, then we can tell the restaurants how many people we're expecting, but it's still good. We use it for communication as well. Next, I want to talk a little bit about our sponsors. We've got these sponsors here. I'm going to go through them. We start with the RAL National Association. And tonight we actually have Brian Pinkowski, who is the president of the RAL National Association. I'll let him say a few words about this.
Yeah, thanks, Vern. Yeah, and thanks for saying, passing on your regards regarding Gene's passing. It was a shock to all of us. He was very much an inspiration to thousands of people to get into this business and take care of the disabled elderly. He didn't think of himself as a human rights warrior, but as we'll talk about later, in fact, he was, and you all are. So we'll miss him. As for the association itself, we're doing a lot of things, including what you heard about tonight with respect to fire codes, facility guidelines institutes. We're registered as lobbyists in a couple of states and growing to be able to help each of the communities, each of the assisted living communities have their voices heard. And membership is free, so we encourage you to sign up.
Thanks, Brian. They've done a great job. What is it, 40,000 members now?
We have over 50,000 individual members and 22,600 homes.
Fantastic. So very strong.
Yeah.
I encourage everybody to join. Next, we have the RAL Academy. If you are new to this business, this is a great place to go and get education. And we have a link directly to it up in that on our website at RAL. And this academy is actually created by Gene Guarino, and it's being continued to be run by his kids, Isabel and Emmanuel. Next, we have assisted living marketing, and Peter is here, and I'll let Peter say a few words about his company.
Hey guys, thanks Vern, appreciate it. Yeah, we do digital marketing for senior care communities, do a lot of websites, lead generation with ads, and just help you out with that stuff. So something I noticed for some of our folks on here that you're using Gmail accounts or Outlook accounts, I will set up completely free for you. I'll set up a professional email. So whatever your domain is, we'll get you hooked up with Google Workspace or something like that. And I'll set that up for free. So just email me so you can have a professional email address to go with your senior care community there. And if you need anything else, tech wise, in terms of marketing and websites and all that stuff, we have a whole host of things that we can do for you. So thank you.
You bet. That's a heck of a deal too. You know, I'm going to vouch for Peter. He does a fantastic job. He has done our dollar website. He's also done my wife's business website. He's working on my real estate website. He's been the most responsive IT guy I've worked with in over 20 years of dealing with websites. So he's really been a pleasure to work with.
Thank you.
And next we have Colorado's assisted living lawyers. It's probably more than Colorado though, because I believe that you guys are working nationwide. And Brian and Michelle Pinkowski. Brian is, well, Michelle's the better half, but Brian's here. And we'll let him say a few words about the law firm.
Yeah, well, indeed. Thank you. Michelle is, in fact, the better half, but she's unavailable tonight. She's out in Los Angeles, so you get me. And we do work nationwide. We've got a presence in a few different states that we work with, and we help people with things such as what we're talking about tonight, with when they need to deal with fire departments and interact with them regarding how federal law interacts with local planning and zoning and fire codes. And we also help people when they're ready to transfer their properties. We help them with the actual purchase and sale of the business, as well as a number of other things, particularly dealing with the administrative state that we live in. Regulations are a regular source of friction between our clients and the governments, and so we end up helping address that to make sure that our clients' voices are heard. Thank you, Vern.
You're welcome. And Brian and Michelle do a great job. I refer all my clients to them. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, you know, we should expand, but we can't, either the HOA or the city. And I always tell them, you need to talk to Michelle because she's an expert at helping you get more beds in your homes. And that's where the money is. You know, there's a certain point that you break even, and then you get over that break even point and you're starting to make profits. So the more heads you can put in beds, the better off you're going to be. All right, next we have Grand Avenue Business Brokers at A Better Way Realty, and that's me. And so I'm a certified business intermediary. I can help you buy or sell a business. We also do lease options at our group. A Better Way Funding nationwide. We can help. And the way this works is we'll come in and buy the property and put some money to fix up, and then lease it back to the operator. The operator has the option to purchase it back from us in the future at the price we set today. So you get the appreciation that builds going forward. So if you are curious about what that program looks like, that website there, ralleaseoptions.com, kind of explains the whole program, and feel free to reach out to me. My recent activity here is a little bit old. I didn't get a chance to update this tonight, but we've got six deals closing next month and another 2 or 3 closing in January. So I've been a very busy guy lately. Okay, so CALA, we have Tammy Muir from the Colorado Association, or Colorado Assisted Living Association, and she can tell us what's going on with them.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces. I really wasn't thinking tonight was a formal meeting, so I wasn't overly prepared, but I think Peter and I are going to tag team this. I am a board member of CALA, and I also own a small assisted living up in Fort Collins currently. I guess mostly what I just wanted to share with you, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the new mitigation guidance that was just released on Friday of last week, or if any of you were on the call with the health department today, for those of you who are in Colorado. It's quite interesting, the, I'll just say lack of support from the health department on this. Pretty much what I learned from the call today is that as an assisted living, we are not allowed to deny any visitation regardless of status. If somebody passes a screening, we can't control numbers of people, length of visits, and that we're not supposed to have policies regarding that. So on Thanksgiving, we might have 30 people in an 8-bed house, and that would be okay with them. Sorry if I sound a little cynical. It's like we've tried to keep people safe for all this time, and the health department keeps kind of not giving us a lot of good options. But that being said, make sure that you review that. There's been a lot of changes as far as testing and quarantine, regardless of vaccination status, requirements for boosters and that kind of thing, as well as complete vaccination status by the end of the year. The other thing that I want to make sure that those of you who are in current operation, that there is mandatory COVID reporting, and they are mandating that it has to be on the 1st and also the 15th. If you do it before or after that day, they are issuing deficiencies and are citing fines. And every time that happens, it becomes a check mark on your report card, and it will be, if it's consistent, they will use it as a repeating offense that will affect licensure and possibly more than that. In addition, don't forget your EMR updates that you have to do every week, which is kind of a repetitive process, but they really are honing in on that. So just trying to let our members know from CALA, and also some of you who may or may not be members, just to kind of be on the lookout for that. We had a happy hour last evening with CALA, and I think pretty much we really just need to support each other. Everybody's kind of feeling frustrated with staffing and health department, and feeling that we don't have the health department on our side all of the time. And Brian may mention some of those comments tonight, but we are interested in collecting data that we can bring back to the health department to kind of be the voice for all of us who are in industry, and really trying to make this a go, and trying to do the best as we can for our residents. Peter, you want to add to that?
The only thing I would add to that is the upcoming conference, February 10th and 11th. Going to be a huge conference. We're also going to be doing a legislative reception. So we're going to be inviting all the state legislators out to that as part of that happy hour. So you're going to get a conference and legislative opportunity to meet one-on-one with our state representatives to voice your concerns about the industry. So if you're not on our email list, we'll get you added to the email list so you guys can be updated on the conference. That's all I got.
Great. Thanks to both of you for your contribution, and thanks to CALA for keeping doing what they've been doing for many years. Okay, next we will go to our presentation, and I don't know if Brian needs any more introduction because we've given him a little bit, but I will say I've known Brian for, I think it's been about 4 years now.
Getting to be closer to 6.
Is it? Yeah, time flies. And we met at the first national conference that Ral had put on. And, you know, we've been very pleased that they're in our backyard because they've done wonderful things for our community. Back when they were trying to change the regulations and really making it tough, Brian and Michelle were actively advocating for the community. And, you know, we just can't thank them enough because the efforts they put in and the results that came from that. it makes your life much, much easier. And they continue to do this on and on. I know that Michelle's working really hard with FGI as well. So no more further ado, let's welcome Brian Pinkowski.
Okay, I need you to, here we go. And let's see how that works. And see if we can make it go. All right. Okay, so you guys can hear me and see this? Everything is okay? All right, and if you have any comments or something you want to raise your hand, just because of the way the screens are set up, it's a little challenging for me. And so if you send in a note, Vern or somebody will bring it to my attention so that I know that there's a question. Okay, so our fire department's trying to close RALs. Now, this is a hot topic across the United States. Not so much in Colorado, but across the United States, there are a few places where this is driving small assisted living home places to pull their hair out. Our research into this question indicates that the answer is no, they're not, but they are being firefighters, doing what firefighters do, which is try to keep people alive at all costs. And so sometimes that runs contrary to what people want and the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws. But nonetheless, it is a hot issue. And so let's give you a small example of what kind of thing we see. Yes, that's who I am. So this is language that we've seen from an inspection. Assisted living, this is a small assisted living. Assisted living facility is operating outside the approved occupancy classification. Residents that are incapable of self-preservation cannot reside in an assisted living. If we can get this to turn. So here are the choices that were given by the local fire department and during the initial exchange. The facility can relocate the residents that are incapable to the compliant facility, i.e. a nursing home, or the current facility shall meet all construction and staffing requirements of an institutional occupancy. Again, a nursing home. So you can either become a nursing home or move your residents out to a nursing home. Now, last I checked, people who are in assisted living need assistance. So on its face, what it looks like is they're saying, wait a minute, you guys can't have people in an assisted living place because they need assistance. And that means they can't self-preserve, and there are gradients about that we'll talk about as we go through this. So the question was, what in the world is this all about? Okay, so the first thing is, let's look up the words incapable of self-preservation. Now, I saw an interesting comment from somebody on Facebook who said, what in the world does the International Building Code have to do with local fire departments? That's not right. Or the International Code Council and blah, 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 blah. Well, there is this professional organization. It's an international organization. It's housed in the United States, as many international organizations are. And what they do is they look at building codes and fire codes and residency codes and all that kind of thing. And they develop professional standards that are used generally around the world. And they are the ICC, the International Codes Council. And they produce the International Fire Code, International Building Code, International Residential Code. So those codes are in part adopted by local jurisdictions, fire departments, and cities. So that's how fire departments end up with words like this. So going to the International Fire Code, which is about a 2-inch thick book that I've got sitting on the floor next to my desk, this is the definition of incapable of self-preservation. Persons who, because of age, physical limitation, mental limitation, chemical dependency, or medical treatment, cannot respond as an individual to an emergency situation. I don't know what those last words mean, but it seems to mean that it's whatever the inspector might think it means. Again, I don't think that they mean ill, but I think they're in the business of trying to save lives. And so, somewhere in their heart of hearts, they know what cannot respond as an individual to an emergency situation means. But as a lawyer who wants to talk about words in front of courts, I don't know what this means. But this is the thing that they then take at the local level and go and find out whether or not your residents are incapable of self-preservation. Now, in that little snippet that I gave you from somebody's inspection who was kind enough to share it, they said, well, you can move somebody out of the residence into a I2 setting. That means institutional category 2. All right, so that's basically there's 24-hour medical care, no more than 5 persons who are incapable of self-preservation. Again, we're protecting people to death. And this group includes nursing homes. Okay, so we run into a little bit of a difference of purpose. You're trying to help people live and they're trying to keep people alive. 2 different kinds of ideas. But before we have a full out discussion, we need to know a little bit more about what a residential group is. Assisted living homes are generally residential group 4 or R4. If you are recognizing that some of these letters, I2, R4, sound familiar because they are used in zoning codes around the United States as well. So all of these things flow together. And just as there's an international fire code, an international residential code, there's also an international zoning code. So that's why all these words sound the same. So again, we're looking at something similar to that I2, that industrial, where we're providing 24-hour supervised custodial care. Custodial care, not medical care, custodial care. Okay, so now we need to find out what custodial care is. Again, looking up those same definitions: assistance with the activities of daily living, and sorry, hold on. Here we go. And persons who have the ability to respond to an emergency situation and evacuate at a slower rate and or have mental and psychiatric complications. So custodial care assumes that there's some challenges in responding to an emergency situation. It doesn't talk about how slow a slower rate is or what sort of metric they're using on mental and psychiatric complications, but somehow or another, these have to relate to their ability to respond to an emergency situation. Of course, that's the business that you're in. You're in the business of providing custodial care. You would expect people to be able to respond slower or with help. And this is who's included in it. Now, this language is from the International Building Code, and it's used in the International Fire Code. So it includes assisted living facilities, residential board and care facilities, and other kinds of group homes. There are some conditions in the International Fire Code, and those are that 1, that all the persons who receive custodial care without any assistance are capable of responding to an emergency situation to complete the building evacuation. Okay, well, many, but not all of our people in assisted living are in that category. This is more of what we can do. Occupancy conditions shall include buildings where there are persons receiving custodial care who require limited verbal or physical assistance while responding to an emergency situation to complete evacuation. That's normally where you're at. So as I said, all of these codes come from a large international organization in the sky, and they are recommendations. They are not law. They're not law until local jurisdiction takes them on and says, yes, we adopt this. Now you see there's a little thing down there that says note. What happens with many jurisdictions is that the local authority will take the code and amend it. So for example, that bit about being able to remove, to self-evacuate with limited verbal and physical assistance from a building, that actually was deleted in the portion of the code that's used in Colorado Springs, for example. So now they all have to be able to leave on their own. They don't say how fast they have to leave on their own, but they all have to be able to leave on their own without verbal or limited assistance with no other provisions. So this is where things get confusing. There's an international code and Jean and Patty is trying to grab control of my screen. No, sorry, Gambinos. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the cities will take these and make amendments to try and make them fit. Sometimes they'll make them more flexible, and sometimes, like in the case of Colorado Springs, they'll make it less flexible. Now, just because they've made it less flexible doesn't mean they're running around closing down assisted living places. Although it sometimes seems like that, because the first thing that people hear about is when somebody has received an inspection report that says, hey, you can't do that, something similar to what I shared with you at the very beginning. Now, that then spreads like wildfire throughout the whole community and including across state lines. And people go, oh my God, they're trying to shut us down. Well, what happened in that situation is the fire department calmed down about it, started looking at the situation a little bit more closely and found out that, you know, if 7 people that we talked to say that resident B who's morbidly obese is capable of self-evacuating, and she says so herself, and somebody from the state says, well, that person's too heavy, they can't possibly do it, then you got to use a little bit of judgment there as a firefighter when you're looking at it. And so they ended up letting the matter go entirely. So you run fire drills and you see that people are able to take care of themselves, you got to go with that data. And that's what ended up happening. And that's what we see in a lot of places. There's some issues going on in Arizona right now with the city, with one particular city, where something similar is happening. They're working at trying to do this, trying to enforce this code because that's their job, is to enforce this code. But then when presented with Fair Housing Act arguments, they discovered that, you know, if we enforce this code, we're actually violating people's individual rights to live how they want to live. There we go. So what is their job at the fire department? Well, this is one of the things they're doing. And this is the other thing. So now I just pulled from Colorado. I could have done this from any state in the nation and would have found some similar language. The purpose of the fire authority is to adopt and enforce fire codes as their board of directors deems necessary. And then those boards then make recommendations to cities, depending on how it works. Cities and fire codes or fire authorities then pick these codes out. So that's their job. That's their job. Okay, Fair Housing Act. In the 60s, Martin Luther King and others were working on housing discrimination. And in 1988, that came to include, well, it's included disabilities for quite some time. And so disabilities that's the heart and soul of the assisted living business, because all of the residents in assisted living are there because they need help with the activities of daily living. And those activities of daily living are identified as handicaps, now called disabilities in the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so what was happening, excuse me, what was happening was that with people who had disabilities were being marginalized. They were being shunted off to some creepy powder town. They were being removed from their neighborhoods. And eventually people said, that's not really right. People should be able to continue to live in community with their neighbors because it's good for them therapeutically. It's good for families, and it's their right to do so. And so that's what you all are actually in the business of doing, is providing fair housing on a residential scale to elderly disabled people who need and want to live in a residential setting. And that federal law trumps a local fire code. And here's what it says. It's illegal, unlawful to discriminate in the sale, rental, or to otherwise make available or deny a dwelling. Okay, so otherwise make available includes by imposition of zoning or regulation or other government action or HOA action or anything like that. If people are working to prohibit the ability of your residents to live where they want to live by shutting down that opportunity, that's unlawful. And so that is the other half of the discussion that takes place with fire departments when they raise this, we got to protect these people. Yeah, but there's a balancing point. They have to be able to live where they want to live as much as possible. So most people in this business don't usually think of themselves this way. But in fact, you are all civil rights warriors. You're fighting for the rights of seniors to live in communities. That's not some kind of pie in the sky kind of thing, but just take a moment and think about how that's really your job, is to make sure that they have the right to live in communities as they've done their whole lives. And you are providing that avenue for them to do that, and you're protecting that right. That's really, really awesome and courageous. So, hey, we need to maybe get some t-shirts made for all the people in this business, because what you're doing is super important. And I know that we are very, very happy and proud to be working with communities, with assisted living communities across the nation, because you are all civil rights warriors without even realizing it. You're humble and you don't even know it. So there's a couple things that are happening in response to this. And what happens when the fire department comes and does an inspection and says, well, you know, fire code says this, it's section 420.1 and yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So you need to move all those people out. And if we get contacted or other attorneys get contacted, then we say, yeah, hold on a minute there, fella, because you're imposing a law that denies the right of this person to live in a community. You're wanting to do the very thing that was the reason for the Civil Rights Law, the Fair Housing Act to begin with. Shunt them off to someplace they don't want to go. They don't, you know, there's a place for nursing homes in this world, but let's face it, nobody wants to go there. You don't want to go there until it's absolutely positively necessary, and our residents are the same. So what they're doing is they're pushing back with the Fair Housing Act. They contact us, we get into communication with fire departments. Usually they see that this is a similar kind of question to whether or not that you can have a certain number of beds, except it's even more fundamental. It's not about whether you can have the right number of beds. This is about whether they can exist there at all. So it's even more fundamental. So we push back with the Fair Housing Act, and generally we're successful. And the Americans with Disabilities Act also protects you, because that also prohibits the enforcement of law, any kind of government action that makes a discrimination against a protected category of people, and those with disabilities are protected. So, as I said, what's really happening here? What's really happening is that the International Code Council, they're meeting in Washington, D.C., and they have their annual meeting and they talk about X, Y, and Z, and they come together and say, this set of rules would be protective of people in these kinds of settings. They're not interested in addressing, it's actually not their job to look at the question of whether it violates anybody's rights. They're just answering the simple question, what can we do to protect people who live in this environment? And then they take that and they send it out to a bunch of city council people and fire departments everywhere who aren't always aware of this particular industry. And they're generally not aware of these legal rights. And so they'll revise these codes in a way that they think makes sense, but they're doing so with only part of the information. So what happens, just like with the Facilities Guideline Institute, is that we'll get into a conversation with them, and governments, as I have said to a couple of people before, would rather die than admit they were wrong about even the smallest thing. So they want to keep their code, but they just won't enforce it. And that's okay, because that's still, in the eyes of the courts, a reasonable accommodation for your residence. And that's what it's called in the courts and in the law. It's a reasonable accommodation. Excuse me. And most of the time that works out just fine. I mean, if you have a resident that you absolutely can't take care of because you've only got one person on staff and they can't get them out of the house if there's an emergency, that's a situation that you're going to have to work through. But most of the time, fire departments, when you actually present them with the information, with the legally protected rights, things work out just fine most of the time. What the National Association is doing, the RAL National Association, is just like with the Facilities Guidelines Institute. We are trying to get on to some of these code committees to help educate them as to what this industry is about and what these standards that they're doing are unwittingly causing a conflict about. And so we're trying to do that with the National Fire Protection Association, with the International Fire Code Committees and the International Building Code Committees and others. Okay, that was a bit of a fire hose. Let me pause there and let's see if you have any questions.
We had a couple comments in the chat.
Okay.
One is, I don't believe the local fire departments are the problem for ALRs. It's at a state level through DFP. And another comment, yes, it is state level. We're dealing with DPS. I'm not quite positive what the acronyms are there.
Okay, well, in Colorado, there might be a reference to Colorado's Department of Public Safety. And in fact, now we have a recent state law change that's creating problems for people, whether they're private pay or Medicaid, in that now there's two fire authorities. There's a state level authority and a local authority who are then getting into people's business to make issues, because there's even if you're not a Medicaid facility, if they think it's conceptually possible that you could be a Medicaid facility at some point in the future, then you get some extra inspections. So with reference to those particular comments, that's about the recent change in the law here in Colorado.
Okay.
Can I comment on that, Brian?
Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, with the whole, if it could be a Medicaid facility, when the legislature voted on that, it was really regarding mental health institutions and not assisted living residences, that they were trying to allow for that extra safety measure. But the way the statute was written, my understanding of it anyway, is that it's an interpretation piece of it, because it doesn't clearly say assisted living. And I think that's what's one thing that CALA is looking at in the, sorry, this is Tamara Muir. I think that is one thing that CALA is looking at with this upcoming session, is to clarify some of the language that has been appropriated to assisted living regarding other entities. And I think I'll just tell you, I recently had a Department of Fire Safety inspection, and I got cited on, there's a pressure gauge that apparently the pressure gauge is only guaranteed for up to 8 years. And after that, it should be calibrated or changed out. And so I had to spend $250 to change a pressure gauge because I could not document that it had been calibrated. And with local fire authority, they said it's a recommendation. It's not a mandate. It's not a law. It's not, but the DP fire prevention is really kind of just picking little things up. They just reinstituted their fee structure for all assisted livings at $500 a year. And so now some of us are paying double between local and the state departments. So just a comment on that.
No, that's right. And I see there's a couple more questions. Let me show you the exact language she's talking about. The division of public safety is the Fire and Life Safety Code official for certified health facilities. In this case, they're talking about Medicaid, and facilities that could potentially become a certified facility. Yeah, so it's that potentially bit that creates the double inspection business. So now we have the local fire department, and now we have the Department of Public Safety at the state level. That's what's going on there. All right. We had another question, Vern?
No, we don't.
I saw a hand raised.
Anybody
went
have a
away.
question?
It was Ray Salcedo.
Oh yeah, Brian, it's me. I raised my hand because I have a kind of like I have the told us I had that situation before with the fire department because we're a secured facility and we have to like redo everything that's in the house. Like for instance, our fire alarm system, and because we're trying to get our Medicaid provided by that time, and it's pretty harsh. I had so much trouble. It took me at least a year and 2 months just to get approved by Medicaid.
Yeah, the whole Medicaid system is getting a little bit more and more challenging, which of course is just putting a huge squeeze on the people who need it the most.
Mhm.
That's real unfortunate. I'm looking at a couple back and forth in the chat thing here. It's at the state level, it's not at the local level. Actually, it's both. And it depends on the state. So right now in Colorado, we have this new state level layer that's already being imposed on the local level stuff. But the language I gave you from at the very beginning of the presentation was from a local level fire inspector. So yeah, so if there's, Ray, are you in Colorado?
Yes, sir.
All right, you have my contact information. We can talk another time.
Okay.
Awesome, very good. So any other comments or questions, or am I missing some information? I know we got Jonathan Sims, who's an architect who works for small homes on the line. We have a few others who are knowledgeable in this area. It wouldn't hurt to hear hear something from them.
I got a quick question on that last screen share that you had. What determines if it may become a Medicaid facility? Is that the operator's choice to say, hey, we're looking at this, or do they look at it and say, this might become one?
I will tell you that we recently heard about a private pay facility with absolutely no intention ever to become Medicaid certified, and they came in anyway and said, well, you can still potentially do it. So do-gooders gone mad. Which, I mean, there's other language in here that would give them, in the state law, that would give them some opportunity to flex their muscles there, but it's just a little unnecessary. What with COVID and all the attention on seniors in assisted living homes getting COVID, people are looking for an opportunity to help more folks, notwithstanding the fact that the people who were dying of COVID were largely in the large assisted living homes, not in the small ones. At least in Colorado.
Yeah, I think that's nationwide too, which is a pretty good marketing advantage, I think, for the smalls.
Infection control is a big deal at the small, just by nature of how it's set up. And in fact, the larger facilities, architects are now talking about how to do infection control. They're making larger facilities, which are really little pods of 16 to 12, just inside of a larger building. So they're emulating the small. Yeah. Anything, you guys done with this, or shall I leave it up? All right, I'll close this down. Very good. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you.
That was awesome, Brian. Thank you very much. Appreciate that information.
You bet.
Okay, let's see here. We will move on to the last part of our meeting, which is haves and wants. And this is an opportunity for anybody in the group to, if you have a service that you'd like to share with the group, if you have a want, if you're looking for a partner, something along those lines, this is your opportunity to express that to the group. So do we have any haves and wants? Does anybody have a service they'd like to share? Recommendation? Looking for a partner? Want to say hi? Okay. Well, hey, I'll throw one out there. I do have a 43-bed facility for sale that is in Grand Junction that we just lowered the price down to pretty much real estate value at 2.5 million. It has had a little bit of an issue this year because he's had COVID throughout a couple of the houses, so they have not been able to get the census to full like they would normally be. And of course, like everybody else, he's suffered an increase in staffing. But that said, it is a pretty good opportunity for somebody that could come in and turn a business around and pick it up for basically real estate value. 43 beds, Grand Junction. If you have any interest in that, please reach out.
And this is Anil. I have a quick thing. Someone I know wants to host only 2 people in their house and not be licensed. And if it's possible, I do not know the answer for that, but if someone knows that, please reach out to me. My information is in the chat. It's just I'm trying to help someone.
And I believe that is allowed up to 2 without a license. So I do see that, and I see it a lot when people are getting started and waiting for their license. They'll put 2 people in until they get the license, just so that they can, pay the overhead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We should probably confirm. VJ, Anil, is that in Colorado or elsewhere?
Colorado.
Yeah, definitely. You're okay with 2.
Good point.
Yeah, but I guess I should be more clear with my question. Is there someone who can help get her, or is there someone who can help get her started?
How?
She's got a QMAP. She just wants to, I guess, buy a house and have 2 people in there. So I'm not sure how I could help her. She just called me today, so I thought I'll take this opportunity to ask.
If she's looking for a house, she can call Vern. If she's looking for how to make sure she stays square with the regulators, she should call me.
Perfect. And I already gave her Vern's number.
And we do there's a few people here too that could do consulting. And I do have another gal that does consulting as well. So, maybe a conversation with her might be good. So you can give me a call and I can share that information with you.
Yep, I'll give you a call, Vern, tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank
Also,
you.
I want to remind everybody that the chat screen, if you click on a little button where you will put your information in, and you can save that chat, and that way you have all this info. I know somebody had asked me if I could save it and send it to them. I'm trying to find who that was. So I will have this. Okay, so Bill says, here in Missouri, they passed a law recently to make all RALs be under the same state licensing as big boxes. I am not sure about that. I think that, I think we're kind of the same here too, because the license here, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but it's the same assisted living license. It's just the number of beds is the difference.
Right. There's differences with respect to some of the building infrastructure when you reach a certain number of beds, but otherwise the license itself is the same. Health facilities license.
Yeah. So that may not be unusual, Bill. Any other questions, comments, concerns, open forum? we've got a few minutes here.
Hi, this is Jonathan. I've got just a question for Mr. Pinkowski. I'm going to simplify and make it a little colorful just for fun, but for this, it sounded though as though if a fire department comes around with pitchforks, you wave around the FHA and the ADA, and they kind of back down, or at least you've had some success in that very simplified scenario. Can you talk a little bit more about what that interface looks like with fire departments? What
Sure.
portions of the FHA and ADA, or are you providing them, just simply pointing them towards those articles, or is there more to it? Can you add a little bit more color to that interface with the fire departments, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. When they first sent out their inspection report in the language, something like what I showed you at the beginning, people get upset. And so there's kind of an emotional upswing, and then they contact us, and we usually write what's called a reasonable accommodation letter. And so we do that, and it makes it clear how what they're asking for runs directly across the individual rights that are protected by federal law, and it's discriminatory in general, because we don't know what the exact situation is that we're talking about. This is the generality of it. But whenever they're denying somebody the right to live where they want to live in a residential community, then that is squashing their federally protected individual rights. See the earlier comments about how you guys are all accidental civil rights warriors. So that's it. And usually what happens is then they go, we didn't know that. Because why would they know that? They're in the business of looking at the fire code and doing what firefighters are supposed to do and all that. They're not in the business of looking at how other people's rights are typically looked at. So we have to bring that to their attention. So there'll be a couple of phone calls, there'll be some letters, maybe a few Zoom meetings, and then there'll be a reasonable accommodation request, which is not a pithy little document. It usually includes a lot of court cases and whatnot to make it very clear to them exactly how they're enforcing or asking to enforce the fire code doesn't really make sense in a particular situation. And then they'll usually sit back and kind of go, all right, okay, we see your point on that. And then let it go. That's not a guarantee, because it depends on the facts of every particular situation. And every once in a while, you run across a city that takes a position that, well, you're right, but you can't make us do it unless you go to court. So phooey on you. And that happens once in a while, but not so often. Most people are trying to do the best they can for everybody, and government employees certainly are in that category. They see themselves as doing what is best for everybody, not in trying to run people over. So when we reason with them about the larger picture, they usually want to continue to do the right thing rather than just insisting on being right. Never mind, I'll bite my tongue about that particular point. Does that help?
That's perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right. Again, open forum. We still have some time. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? Okay. We do leave this open if you did want to continue to network. And I just basically step aside and leave the room open until the last one is here. And at that point in time, we'll shut her down. This recording will be on our website. It is also live on Facebook. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Normally we don't have a meeting in December, although this year it's kind of between the holidays. So we're still up in the air if we will take December off or not. But we will definitely have one in January. So if we don't see you in December, then we will see you in January. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and thanks for coming.
Thanks for letting me talk to you all. We'll see you later. All right,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Brian.